Hi, we're a group of leaders from the LGBTQ Club Coalition in the Acalanes Union High School District. This is the beginning of a two-part cohort series on the LGBTQ community.
We're creating this series to provide the community at large with information about the LGBTQ community to clear up misconceptions and make sure everyone has the vocabulary to talk about sexuality and gender. I am Erin Armstrong-Nazar. I use he, they pronouns. I am a junior and a co-president of Campo Lindo Sexuality and Gender Alliance.
Hi, I am Abby Inzio. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a sophomore and social secretary of Campo Lindo Sexuality and Gender Alliance.
Hello, my name is Ryan Gottschalk. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a senior at Miramani High School, and I am the president of the Miramani Sexuality and Gender Alliance.
Hi, I'm Emerson Brown. I use they, them pronouns. I am a junior and the co-president of the Acalanes Queer Student Alliance.
Hello, I'm Autumn Long, and I also use they, them pronouns, and I'm also a junior and co-president of the Acalanes Queer Student Alliance.
Hi, I'm Abby Wallach. I use she, her pronouns. I'm a junior and the vice president of the Sexuality and Gender Alliance at Miramani.
Welcome to our first lesson in our LGBTQ cohort module. Today, we're going to be talking about sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. So today's presentation aims to answer three key questions. 1, why do we need to talk about this? 2, what are the terms and definitions we are using when talking about it? And 3, how can we be a more inclusive community? First, we're going to be going over some important and useful terms. The first important term is SOGIE, which is an acronym that refers to sexual orientation, gender identity, and expression. SOGIE refers to characteristics common to all human beings, as everyone has a sexual orientation and a gender identity. Everyone expresses their gender, not just individuals who identify as part of the LGBTQ community. The term SOGIE describes a wider spectrum of all people. It's inclusive of everyone. Within SOGIE, sexual orientation is defined as a person's physical, romantic, emotional, or other form of attraction to others. Gender identity is the individual identification of a person's gender and can differ from their biological sex at birth. Everyone has a gender identity, even if that identity is no identity. Finally, gender expression refers to the way one expresses their gender identity. It is the physical manifestation of gender identity and includes things such as hair, clothes, speech, etc.
So now that we know what SOGIE is, let's take a look at how sex, gender, and expression are all distinct. Sex is determined by biological factors, namely chromosomes, genitalia, and hormones. Gender is your identity. It does not have to align with your biological sex, and it's who you are internally. Expression is how you express your gender identity. Unlike gender identity, it's external. Cisgender is when a person's biological sex and their gender align, while transgender is when a person's biological sex does not align with their gender. So now that we have an idea of what the differences are between sex, gender, and expression, let's take a closer look at why pronouns are such an important aspect of both gender identity and expression. Pronouns are a part of gender expression. Using the right pronouns is important because it validates the identity of the person that you are speaking to or about, and it demonstrates your respect for that person. Now, we're going to take a look at 3 questions. First, what presented so far is familiar to you? Secondly, what presented so far is new to you? And third and finally, what questions do you have about gender orientation, identity, or expression? At this point, you should pause the video and go into breakout rooms to discuss these questions.
Now we will be talking about the LGBTQIAP+ acronym. This is, of course, not all of the identities within the community, but they are by far the most prominent and most well-known.
All right, first term is lesbian, which means women who love other women. And here we have gay, which can mean men who love other men, but it is also an umbrella term for anyone who is not straight. Then we have bisexual and biromantic, which is the sexual or romantic attraction to two or more genders. Then same thing here with pansexual and panromantic. It is the sexual or romantic attraction regardless of gender. So it is similar to bisexual, but it is a different identity. All right, now I have asexual and aromantic, which is when someone doesn't feel sexual or romantic attraction. These are not mutually exclusive. You can be asexual without being aromantic and vice versa.
Now we have transgender. Someone is transgender when their birth sex, meaning their chromosomes, genitalia, and hormones, do not align with their gender identity being what we feel inside. There is binary trans and non-binary trans. Binary is when someone is a trans man or a trans woman, and then we have non-binary, which I will explain now. Non-binary is under the trans umbrella, and it means when someone does not identify within the binary genders of male and female. This could be feeling more of a neutral gender, somewhere in between male and female, or completely outside of that spectrum from male to female. And now we have queer. Queer is an umbrella term for anyone who is not cisgender and or not straight. Queer is a slur, but people are starting to reclaim it, so you just have to be mindful of its use. Questioning is when someone is, well, questioning if they are part of the LGBTQ+ community. And now we have intersex. This is when someone's sex is not entirely binary. So you could have X chromosomes, XX chromosomes, and ovaries, but have an excess amount of testosterone. Not everyone who is intersex may identify with the LGBTQ+ community, so you just have to be mindful of that if someone tells you that they are intersex.
In addition to having all of the terms that we just went into, there are even more. So each of these terms is always evolving. They become different things, or they become more specific things. And additionally, different languages, like Spanish is just different than English, have different ways of describing similar concepts. And so some of these different cultures have different ways of describing their sexual orientations and gender identities. And just overall, let people identify as they say they are, and do not push what you think they are on them. Next, we're going to be talking about allyship for a little bit. What is an ally? An ally is someone who advocates and supports a community that isn't their own. So, for example, someone who isn't part of the LGBTQ+ community, but advocates and supports the LGBTQ+ community is an ally of the LGBTQ+ community. An ally should not just say that they're an ally, but show it through action and upstanding. And we'll also go into this a little bit further in lesson 2.
And so our next little mini section is about your rights as a student, specifically as a student in California. So the bills that we're about to talk about only help students in California schools. The first one is Assembly Bill 537 that was passed in 2000, and it added new language to the previously existing anti-discrimination policy. It added real or perceived gender identity or sexual orientation. So this essentially protects students and school employees from discrimination based on assumptions or stereotypes. That's where the perceived part comes in. And this bill also gave protection to GSAs and QSAs and other LGBTQ related clubs at school. So basically it says that the school can't treat these LGBTQ oriented clubs different than they would any other club at the school. And so the second California bill was passed in 2013, and this focuses on sex discrimination. It affirms the rights of trans students to use locker rooms, bathrooms, and facilities that match their gender identity, regardless of the gender on their records, which could mean on their birth certificate, driver's license, etc. It also allowed students to participate and play on sports teams consistent with their gender identity. Now, this is super important in current issues right now because many states are trying to pass legislation banning trans kids and specifically trans women from playing on sports teams. This bill also just applied not just to trans students, but to the general population, and it says no sex discrimination. So if one opportunity is offered to everyone of one sex, the other sex would get it as well. And they can't require something of one sex that they don't require of the other sex as well.
So our final thing for today is just this quote. I'll read it out. We are not what other people say we are. We are who we know ourselves to be, and we are what we love. That's okay. And this is by Laverne Cox, a famous transgender person. And so we really just want you to discuss this quote and say what it means to you personally and what it also means in the context of this lesson. Thank you.
Thank you.